Welcome back to Pencils and Lipstick, everyone. This is episode 240, and we are already in October. I am Kat Caldwell, the hostess of the show, the creator, the person who talks to you the most. But today we have a guest, so you won't have to just listen to me. I have Ben Hawken on the show, and I have to say I really enjoyed speaking with him. I think you're going to really enjoy this episode because it's not just about writing, it is about being creative. So, Ben Hawken is the award-winning creator of several beloved video series and a small handful of children. His first book is called Chandelier, and previously he was the author of 0 other books and graduated with honors from a community college as well as a real college, and he lives outside of Seattle with his family. So if that bio doesn't tell you that you're going to have a good time on this episode, well, then you're just in a bad mood and you might need some more coffee. And I'm going to drink my coffee right now. So go get your coffee and get in a good mood because Ben and I have a great conversation about him just living a creative life, really looking for outlets to all of his creative energy. And it's pretty funny, he writes this book in a fairly short amount of time. But he sounds like he is a high energy guy. So you guys let me know. And I think that you guys should check out his book. His links will be in the show notes below. The book sounds amazing. So if you guys are looking for something to read, maybe for your book club, I don't know, looks like a good book. So it's called Chandelier. And I will have the links in the show notes, of course. So as this episode goes out, it is the second week of October, and this starts the week of just absolute madness in my life. So I am recording this intro a little bit early, but I want to tell you guys about a couple things that are coming up. So the Escape the Plot Forest by Daniel David Wallace is this month already. I know this month is also Preptober for a lot of fiction teachers as well. So I am participating in Escape the Plot Forest. My talk is on October 2nd. As usual, it is 5 days and it is jam-packed full of speakers. I was going to say talkers. Yeah, I guess we could be called talkers, but speakers. I'm really excited about my talk. It was something that I had been thinking about for a long time. How do you build a story around the character that haunts you? I just thought that that title was fitting, but it also is true that we have these characters that haunt us, right? And a lot of times we can't always find a story around them. Or at least I can't always. So that is what I'm talking about. And I am excited about the talk. You get notes with the talk. And as usual, you can sign up for the Escape the Plot Forest Summit for free. And then you kind of have to be like in it and part of it. I think you get to watch the replays for like 24 hours, possibly. And of course, if you want to do the upgrade, I can't. I should have this information with me. I believe you have to spend $67 to upgrade. Oh my goodness, I should know this. If you are on my newsletter, then you will get the information. Why aren't you on my newsletter if you're not in my newsletter? But the attendance of the Plot Forest is always free. You can always sign up for free. Then you can like upgrade, I think $67, and you can get all the talks just forever, basically. That's sort of the summit format that we have. Sorry for that noise. I'm using a new microphone handle arm. I don't know what it is. I just whacked it. So Escape the Plot Forest, I will have the link in the show notes below. Of course, it is an affiliate link, but that so if you do sign up for the VIP pass, I get paid a little bit, but it is not more money for you, of course. So I am also going to celebrate the 98th birthday of my grandmother. So next week, I think that's pretty amazing, and I'm pretty excited to have those genes in me. And yeah, I'm just excited about that. And then Bended Love comes out on October 21st. And I'm already getting some reviews in. I actually did a better job with Bended Love than I did with Bended Loyalty because I don't think I will bring a book out in September anymore. I just don't quite get myself organized with the reviews and all that. And I think also because Bended Love is coming out right afterwards, I'm just sort of meshing it all together when in reality, and everyone says this, you're supposed to put it all together right away. You're supposed to be getting these reviews in and all that stuff. And of course, I didn't quite do that for Bended Loyalty. So, like, the reviews are coming in at the same time for both of them. But, whatever. There is still time for you to get an art copy if you want an art copy. Of course, it's just an ebook, it is not paperback. But if you want to sign up to be an ARC reader, I would love for you to do that. All it requires of you is to put one review in wherever, honestly, Kobo, Amazon, Goodreads, BookBub, it doesn't matter. Just let me know. You can pretty much find me on social media, all the links below in the show notes. If you're on my newsletter, all you have to do is reply to any newsletter and say, hey, I want to be an ARC reader, and you can get it for either one of them, honestly, because you guys are awesome. So of course, I love making sales. I love making book sales, of course, of course. But for all my listeners out there, you're just a handful of people. So if you're listening, I will, of course, give you an ARC copy. I just am very grateful that you guys are still listening to me jabber on all the time. I'm also attending the Brian Cohen self-publishing marketing conference. I don't even know what that's called. And that is next week. So yeah, I'm doing a lot of things. I also have to go to this thing with my husband's company and pretend that I have words to speak more than to write. I go to these things with very important people who are doing very important things in the world. And then they ask me what I do for a living. And I say I write books. I entertain people. This is what I do. Next week, we're also going to have Monica Hay on. And so I'm talking to her also about being neuro different. So we mostly talk about ADHD, but I know that a lot of you have been asking me to have more people on to talk about writing and getting everything done when you are also neurodivergent. And so I'll probably have a couple more people on. So that is kind of my news. I really enjoyed this conversation. I always enjoy it when I can just sort of just relax into a conversation about creativity and listening to someone who's pretty much lived his whole life trying to find an outlet for his creative mind. I think it's pretty amazing what he's gotten to do in his life, making videos. And of course, we sort of show our age in some of the conversation, quite frankly, on how the technology has changed. But I think you're really going to enjoy this interview with Ben Hawken. So definitely, if you are looking for another book to read, other than Bended Loyalty, Bended Love, check out the link. I think that you're going to get something out of this. And again, if you guys want me to talk to somebody about a certain topic, or you want me to have a certain writer on the show, just let me know. You can literally find me on every social media. I'm on every social media all the time. Too much. I should shut it down, but I don't. And definitely get on my newsletter because you're going to hear more about the Escape the Plot Forest and all the things that I'm doing very soon. Can you hear it? Hear the stress in my voice. All right, let's get on with the show because you're going to want to listen to Ben more than me. And there's a lady. Hello, Ben Hawken. Welcome to Pencils and Lipstick.
Kat, thanks for having me.
I see you're a Rocky fan.
Among other things, yeah, it's a great story.
Is it? What do you
Have you
like
not
about that, sir?
have you
I
not seen the
do.
movie?
Oh, I have brothers. They made me.
Yeah, I mean
It is.
anyone who recreationally eats raw eggs, it's kind of a foundational piece of literature.
It is. Did you read
People
the
who've
book
seen
or
the
just
movie get that joke. Was it a book? I don't think it was a book first. I think it was
was
a
it
movie
not? I have no
first. Well,
idea.
didn't it just spring from Sylvester Stallone's mind? I think. I think that's
Did
the
he
story.
even produce it? Yeah, I don't even
He
know.
wrote it, and then if I remember right, they wanted Burt Reynolds to play the part, and he said,
Oh,
"No, I'll take a pay cut if you let me star in it." And they apparently did the math, and they're like, "All right, no one will go see it, but we're paying him so little that we can do without Burt Reynolds." I think either that or it was Burt Reynolds who they wanted to have be Han Solo. Someone please Google this and don't hold it against me. But yeah, they wanted someone who had made a movie before to be the lead,
that's
but
so
since he wrote
funny.
it, he thought he should play it.
I mean, and he was right. There's nothing. It wouldn't be the same movie with Burt Reynolds. That's so
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, it
Burt
wouldn't be the
Reynolds.
same at all. There's something about a sweaty 5'4" guy throwing haymakers that is very inspiring.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I
Oh
don't
my
know what
gosh.
you're laughing about. I think that's pretty
It's
normal thing
pretty
to
normal.
say, but
Totally normal. So Rocky, we all, if nobody's seen it, you didn't have a brother, or I don't know, you didn't live in the 80s. I guess I don't
yeah,
know.
I've been to Philadelphia. It's a very inspiring city.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. Just
Okay,
no,
I was
it's
like,
not.
we're gonna end the conversation right here if that's how you feel about it. I mean, okay, Philadelphia, it does inspire gritty movies.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all that it's known for, I think, is the bell and
Yeah.
gritty movies. I don't know how we got down this path. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up on the East Coast or the West Coast?
And I grew up in South Seattle in Skyway, so
Okay.
it also a gritty part of town. So
Really?
yeah,
I don't know that.
it was lovely. It's still lovely. It's I think it's waiting patiently to be gentrified is what it's doing. So
Jeez. So, how did you become like where does the creativity come for you? Like Seattle, I guess, was grunge. What else is it known for?
there's a lot of that. Yeah, if you were
Boeing?
alive
I
in
don't know.
1994, if you were alive in 1994, it was really a musical heyday. I was 14 that year, so it was fantastic for me.
No
And if
kidding.
you're into commercial aircraft, then yes. If
Yeah.
your two interests are grunge and commercial aircraft, hot damn, Seattle could
It's a
not have been a
great
better place
city.
to grow up.
It's like, what else? What other company is there? There's something.
Got Microsoft and Amazon and Nordstrom.
Microsoft. Yeah, because
Yeah,
Bill Gates is there, right?
yeah, he is. Yeah, somewhere. He and I
Somewhere
don't
around
shop
there.
at the same grocery store, but he's
Do you
around.
not? Okay. I don't think he shops. He has a robot that shops for him. He's still
We should
downloading
all be
his
so
brain on a
lucky.
show. Yeah, no kidding. So you grew up in Seattle, um, and right now you have the title creative director. What is that? What does that mean? What do
Yeah,
you
so
do?
I'm the creative director on like the marketing team for a group
Okay.
here at the tech company that I work at, and so there's a lot of things that either get are getting written or put on camera or put on stage, and at early and often in that process, I have a chance to get involved and just add my input, just thoughts like, hey,
Okay.
what if it explodes into glitter in Act Three?
I like
What
that.
if right as we walk on stage, just strobe lights, just really good ideas like the ones I just shared, just great ones. They're
This
all
is how you
apparent.
got the director on there. Yeah.
This is why they pay me. This is why how I justify my salary is what if there was more glitter? Just
I like this what if. This is what writers talk about, right? We
right.
talk about what if. So what has creativity meant to you in your years since 1994 to
Si-
now?
Since 1994, pivotal year for music
Pivotal
in
year.
Seattle, of course. I was in eighth grade and really charting this meteoric course through life.
You were wearing flannel. You got the flannel.
It was a lot of everyone was wearing their dad's flannel, and their dads were all very confused about it and a little frustrated. It was like my dad who said, "Why do you keep listening to this grunge music where all the guys keep killing themselves? You should listen to some real music like The Doors or Janis Joplin." He didn't see
I
the
mean,
irony, and or Jimi Hendrix, like all these people that lived to a ripe old age, in his opinion.
yes, choked
So
on sandwiches and killed themselves with alcohol.
yeah, and which is a great name of a book. Hold on, you can have that one, Kat. Even though I feel like we developed it together, is
We'll go
the
halvesies on it.
and great. We can split that $0 two ways. It is
That'd be great.
so I grew up in my family when I grew up. Everyone was super smart. I had
Okay.
one younger brother, and of the four of us, I was definitely fourth place on the intellect scale. But I was by far the most aggressive, and I was by far the most outgoing, and I was really just naturally creative. They were all the other three people in the family who were all very smart were also very accomplished musically. And
Oh,
I took a lot of piano lessons for like 5 years, and I don't think I didn't get to the point in the book where you started using the pedals. Okay, that's how
okay.
limited I was musically. And my kids have all taken piano lessons, and 3 weeks in, they're doing songs I never did in all those years. And but what I so I that aggressiveness and that ambition and that interest in doing creative things and trying things out in any medium you could think of, I was able to sublimate all of that into all of those other things down into the creativity. And I was always
Okay.
really interested in what the process was like where do ideas come from?
Okay.
How does an idea go from popping in your head to being on a screen somewhere? How does it go from being on a screen to hitting publish somewhere? like all the nuts and bolts of the creative process were fascinating to me.
Okay.
And I was kind of drawn toward that professionally. And writing to me was always the most accessible
Right.
because throughout my career, I've done a lot of work on video production, but that is really hard to do. Now we all have iPhones, it's easy. But for a lot of my career, there was, getting a crew together, getting all the gear you needed together was difficult. Even
Yes.
podcasting, which I spent a lot of time doing, there's still a lot of gear you need to put together for that, even though that's shrinking as well. But writing was always
Yeah.
the like most accessible, and I felt like the most flexible. Like there's, as many different types of writing as there
Hmm.
are writers, sometimes it seems like, and there was so many ways to explore that. So early in my career when I was working at a PR agency, the number one thing I didn't want to do was talk on the phone to reporters. I don't know if you know much about the media. They're not great one-on-one on the phone. I mean, as an
No.
institution, we know to vilify them, but individually, all that terrible reputation they have as a mass, individually, they live up to it. And I
Oh
didn't want to be on
no.
the phone. And so whenever they needed something written, whether it was like, hey, one of our clients needs a birthday toast for his new wife, I'm like, I'll write it. It's like, hey, we need a very boring press release written. I'm like, I'll write it and it will be fun to read. Like, hey, we need one of our clients is giving a speech at a clinic for pulmonary surgeons. I'm like, I will write it. And just that was my way out of doing all the things I didn't want to do at work all
Okay.
day.
Oh,
So I
I
got
mean,
a lot of
very
reps
creative.
in early and often. And I had to be
All
very
right.
creative in justifying why I was going to do that instead of calling like the Pittsburgh Gazette and trying to tell them about, I don't know, granola bars or whatever it was we were working on at the
Oh
time.
no. That sounds
Yeah.
like a very terrible thing to do. I don't want to do
Oh,
that either.
I'm making it sound so much better than it was. So,
As you do, because you are the creative director. So that was like your first job out of college. What did you study in college, though? Graphic
um,
design?
wouldn't that have made more sense? No,
I
it
don't know.
was like, I thought to myself, listen, you're going to be a lot more creative if you're in a corner and need to get out of it. So why don't you do something fairly useless like major in communications? And I did. And let's make it extra useless and minor in political science. And so I did. And then I get out into the business world and I thought, maybe I'm going to do what all people who are uncertain about their next steps are and go to grad school. So I did that. And then eventually that lands me in New York City where I started working on like the PR and the creative agency side. And I was in New York for a good long stretch and it was awesome. We had a good
That
time.
was fun, though. I think that's pretty normal for people, though. Like if you're a creative kid, your parents, who are, now middle-aged and
Hmm.
very practical, tell you, that's great. Go get a real job, please, so that you leave my house because you have to get a degree because this is the American dream to go, into debt and by getting a university degree. And it wasn't even half as bad for when we were younger. So I think that's pretty normal. Yeah, great. You can do stuff. You can write. Great. Go get a degree and find a job. Like that is, so we do that. And
That's
then we end
essentially
up
it.
wherever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's about right.
Yeah. So where'd you go from New York? How'd you get back to the West Coast?
So one of the things anyone who's ever been to New York has noticed is the accessibility for small children and babies. Like I
Oh
lived
yeah.
there all the years I lived there, I would notice people dragging strollers down the stairs. And I'm like, what are these people doing with
Why
their
are they doing
lives?
that?
Like, and granted, I always tried to be the guy who would like grab the front of a stroller and help them go up 40 stairs. But it's still, even as you're doing it and you're glad to do it, but in the back of your mind, or I guess for me, in the front of my mind, I'm like, why would you put yourself through this? Just move
Yeah.
somewhere while you're having kids and then come back. So as soon as we were expecting our first son, besides, it helped that the economy was melting down in 2008.
Yeah.
But on top of that, there was also my son was on the way, and so it was a good reason to move. And
Yes.
I had a job lined up on here in Seattle,
Okay.
and yeah, that brought us right back here.
Interesting. So in this all this time, you're writing speeches
Mhm.
and obituaries. What did you else did you say? Speeches.
I love that obituary snuck in there. I haven't written any of those. In fact, no, I think I did help
I think you
someone
could.
write one once, except I kept adding details that weren't in there. Was like was a key factor in the design of plutonium refinement machinery in the 1940s, and they didn't like that I was
They
adding
didn't like
things like
this.
that.
You're like,
You
dang
know,
it.
also was a pioneer in the area of dog training. No, they didn't. Cut all this out. But yeah, so all along the way, it was always finding things to write, and then right around the time that see, this would have been like 2010 by now. There was a lot of video production really leaped forward in terms of the type of
Okay.
cameras that could do really high-end work. And so I began pivoting to, I was writing a lot of material that was ending up on camera. And at
Right.
that point, then I would be there while they were shooting it. And eventually it became just, I'll just be in charge when we're shooting it too. And so then
Okay.
I was writing and directing a lot of the material. And once you can write like copy for whether it's speeches or blogs or websites or anything else. And then, hey, we need a video in the middle of this or on the web page or at the halfway point of the speech. When you can write that and direct that too, suddenly there's a lot of tools in the tool belt if there is an organization that can afford to do all those things.
Yeah.
So, which was nice. And I really like I really love all the doing the stuff on camera. It's just um, once again, it comes down to the accessibility of it. Like that is a month-long process, whereas, you can write something and have it up somewhere for people to see that same day.
Pretty quickly. Yeah. I wonder if you had you're at an advantage though, because the kids these days, I mean, we would like to think that
By
they're
the
at
way,
an advantage.
I like anything that starts the kids these days. So
I
please
know.
continue. I'm already on
We're,
board. I'm
I think
already
we're
on
of
board.
the same birth here. So yeah, they
No
are
matter
the
what
kids.
you say, I'm going to agree with it now.
These
So please
guys
keep going.
think they got it easy. And we might agree with them because, with the TikTok.
The
Jeez.
TikToks, in which they download
I
using
am
the
not
Google.
65, but my kids do call me boomer. So I think it has like affected my brain. Um you can be the creative director, right? And you can do all things and you can be very creative and that is an advantage. But when you had to grow up like doing it the hard way, I wonder if it like I'm not sure kids write the copy these days before they just go directly into directing it, right? So I wonder if you have an advantage to have actually put pen to paper, probably actually putting pen to paper and also typing,
Right.
to have seen that entire process and really understand the creative process. Do you think you have an advantage there, or do you think the brain works the same regardless of how you've come to this point, to the TikTok? Jeez.
So without necessarily attacking the TikTok directly, I'll say that for my brain, it was a huge advantage.
Okay.
Being able to have put in, I'd already put in 10,000 hours before I got to within 10,000 hours of moving to the video stuff, right? It was
Right, right,
a
right.
really long time learning, seeing how writing for the blog, writing for like a online environment, and
Mm,
then what do you tweak when it's going to be something that's said out loud over a podium in front of a ton of people? And then also if they're speaking, do they have slides that are with them? Are there graphics? Are there images? What do those look like? I would always be responsible for that as well. So
okay.
that is the nonverbal communication part of it while someone's down there talking. You can really
Yeah.
double up on the information you're sharing if you do it right, if you're strategic with it, which usually doesn't mean very much text on screen, but what are the visuals you're doing with it? Do you address what's on there or do you let it hang there? Do you have it say something that you're not saying or does it emphasize what you're saying? Now we're really down in the PowerPoint weeds right now. I get it.
Right.
I know a lot of authors enjoy hearing PowerPoint strategies,
No, but
but
that's
it
curious
is,
because it's part
yeah,
of it. It's the atmosphere, it's the emotion that you're
yeah,
giving. It's
yeah,
it's the story within the story, right? You're
yeah. And
doing a
so
lot of thinking.
yeah, there was a lot of thinking that went into it. At least when we were doing it right, there was a lot of thinking that went into it. And so by the time it came to start putting things on camera, it was so even when I was really early on at it, I still understood intuitively at least like all the different elements there. Like we have one thing on screen, we have another thing being said. What is the music informing us what to feel like here? Are there
Right.
graphics that are going to pop up to help tell a story? At what point do we say less or say more? Are we getting in and out of a cut quickly enough? That was all stuff that in just a lot of the musical training I had growing up helped as well. Just what is the rhythm of this? People are going to fall in sync with what they're watching, and you
Mm,
can guide them towards emotionally where you'd like that to end if you're doing it right. It's very similar with any novel we're writing. Like there is a
yeah.
certain rhythm to a conversation. There's a rise and fall to the chapter. Like when something big and exciting happens at the end of a chapter, for example, we might be taking it a little easier when we start again. There's going to be a moment to pause there. There'll be a big spike and then you come back down. And I know that certainly while I was writing my novel, which is named Chandelier, available on Amazon, or the website, benhawken.com.
See,
That's
communications.
Hawken. Yes, thank you. I mean, there was certainly patterns there
Yeah.
where I was noticing like, hey, that part was really sad. How do we come out of that? I don't want to come out of it with a joke. because then will that be deflating what we were just working so hard to
Right.
build up? But what is our transition points? And video production is all about transitions. You cannot hard cut from one thing to another. You have to have like a logical move from like part one to part two.
Part two.
And
Okay.
that was all super helpful when it came to, and that was all things I knew intuitively through writing, even though I'd written literally millions of words during the course of my
Right.
career, but never anything, but never a 528 page novel. Like that had never
Yeah.
happened before.
No, that's different. It is a
It
bit
was,
different. And
it
I
was a
think
lot different.
sometimes people are like, well, so there's various ways to be a writer. I think you just said that a few minutes ago, but telling a story, like it seems like you learned how to tell a story when you got into video because
Mhm.
it's different. Like you can put some words together for a speech and you can tell a story that way, but to write a novel and to keep people interested is a whole different thing. Like
Yeah.
it can be way more intimidating and possible. So what was your experience when you think, okay, I'm gonna write this novel?
Yeah.
Were you prepared for it?
I think my experience writing this novel was very similar to many writers, which is I got home from a concert at 2 a.m. and I'd gone out to eat afterwards and I was so full that I wasn't going to fall asleep right away. So I was just watching videos on my phone on the couch at 2 a.m. and I saw one and the idea for the novel arrived all at once. I think that's very relatable. I think everyone's
Yes.
done that.
It
I think
just happens, yeah.
everyone's gone to a concert and then eaten too much with their friends and then come
Yes.
home.
And had their
And so
wife
that's
tell
what
you to go to the couch.
yeah, it pretty much. Oh, I knew not even to bother going upstairs until I was like, ready to fall asleep. And so in that right away, I thought, is this a book? Oh no, like that wasn't on my to-do list.
Okay,
And
so it wasn't on your to-do list? You never
no,
thought of writing a book?
I started a book one like a couple of years earlier, and by the end of the first paragraph, I thought, oh, this is just the last scene of that movie. What's the name of the movie where James Caan and Ryan Phillippe are both hitmen? Someone's gonna Google this.
Oh
And
yeah.
it has some prosaic name that I'm not coming up with. And I looked at the first paragraph and I was like, oh, that's the last scene of that movie. That's not as ridiculous. Put it away. And I thought about it when I would, and I thought about it periodically, but I thought about it more as an intellectual exercise, not gee, I should
Okay.
really do this before I die. But when this idea occurred to me, and because it had to do with a parent who is struggling and to be a person, for lack of a better word, and then also relate and then also raise children,
Okay.
but in the backdrop of something that was humongous, inapproachably huge,
Mm.
that resonated with me because I think that we all feel that way in the abstract at least. And but the what I was kind of with the video I was watching at the time, which kind of gave me the idea, was like helped kind of crystallize it a little bit. And so immediately, and this might have just been the 2 a.m. and the overeating that had occurred to alter whatever my blood chemistry was at the time. That makes it sound like I was taking drugs. I was sober, to be clear. I'm 44. I was not
We're
taking drugs
we're
at 2
all
a.m.
assuming you were not
But
sober
like,
after
no,
a
I
concert.
I was quite sober, as a matter of fact. That does take a bit of the wind out of the sails of this story. But I started dictating into my phone just notes
Okay.
about the story, and like
Mm.
this is the situation. It has this and this and this. Maybe 60% of what I dictated there is represented somewhere in the book. But for
Okay.
2 hours, I just talked into my phone.
Oh my goodness.
And I found out how long you can talk to Siri before it stops, and then you have to start it again to keep repeating it. And I just kept going and going and going. And I should pull that up. It's in a note. It's in a note file somewhere on my phone. I should pull it up sometime and put it side by side with how the story actually turned out. But the next morning I copied and pasted that into a document on my laptop, and over the next 2 weeks, turned that into about 45 pages of outline. And
Okay.
some parts of the outline were just they are in the woods. And
Yeah.
that's it. That was chapter 17 or whatever. And then other times it would be they get a phone call is received, it says this, and then that's it. And then by the end, they've made a big decision to do X, Y, and Z. And then with a big kind of gap in the middle. And that ended up working really well for me because there was enough structure so that I was never in a position where I'm like, what happens next? I have no idea.
Okay.
But there was enough flexibility in there that I could let things unwind naturally and just kind of type and see where it took me.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about writing is if an idea pops into your head, just, geez, that's what life is like. Things happen unexpectedly. Just go with it. And if
Yeah.
it doesn't work out, geez, just delete that paragraph. So it was a lot of
I
experimentation
think
along the way.
I think that's your experience though, as you've probably had to toss a lot in your creative jobs. Because
Oh,
some,
yeah, for sure.
if you haven't had a job like that, there are some writers who are very precious with their words. And I try to
Yeah.
tell people that as well. Like, who, if it's not good, it's not good, just toss it. But some people are like cringing when you say that. Like they don't get it.
I mean, I could understand that if you were carving it into stone, but I mean, you're just typing it on a Word document or a Google Doc. I mean, it means nothing to throw it out. It's cost
Mm,
you, what, 3 minutes of your life to type out a paragraph and then you reread it and you're like, oh, that doesn't work. Right? I mean, and you're
yeah.
right. In the creative field, 9 out of every 10 ideas that pop into my head are don't see the light of day. I mean, it's probably more like 99 because the one thing I've had going for me throughout my career is if we have a big project or a problem we need to solve, or hey, we need an idea for this and it's in a
Yeah.
month. If I will keep coming up with ideas forever until we find one that works. Like it's not like here are my big three and I'm tapped out after this. It's like these are three. If you need three more in an hour, I'll have three more. If we need five more tomorrow, I'll have five more. I have just enough there's just that part of my brain just keeps
You
running,
must
which
be
is
high in ideation. Yeah.
there
You're
are
just
downsides to this for sure, but there are certain, but I found
sleep.
ways to
You don't
monetize it.
sleep. That's probably
Oh, if I don't put in a podcast like this one, for example, I my brain won't turn off. Dude, that didn't sound like an endorsement, did it?
You're
No.
like,
It's like, Cat, if I need to sleep.
here are my garbage cans so I can
No.
sleep.
It's basically I have to put in a podcast about ancient Mesopotamia in order to shut the rest of everything off to
Yeah.
sleep because I will
Yeah.
keep having ideas.
Oh my
So,
goodness. So, hi. Okay. So, as writers are listening to you, I think that's good advice. So, A, keep the ideas coming, right? And just write it out and toss it if it's no good. Whatever. Who
yeah,
cares?
there's very little downside to trying something out on a paragraph. Like I would have lots of times where I'd think of an idea and I would catch myself continuing to develop it. I'm like, no, no, let's just get it out because as I type, this is for me at least, the mechanical function of moving my hands and seeing it right out, like as I'm reading it as I type, is the next idea is starting to attach.
Mm,
Right, seeing it on
mhm.
the screen helps me know what's going to come next. And I know there's a lot of debate right now about, hey, should you plot everything out like perfectly, or should you just sit down with no ideas in your head and go? And it sounds boring, but I do think it's the middle. It's like I
Yeah.
was saying earlier, like I gave myself a lot of empty space just to figure out where stuff went. And if an idea jumped in out of nowhere, I went with it every time because that is kind of like life. If we want these conversations to sound real, if you want your
Right.
dialogue to sound very authentic, real conversations ping pong all over the place while you're having them, really.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just if you're talking to me, they do, but they do go all over the place. So if I had an idea and I had an idea and out of nowhere, that character would suddenly blurt something out, and now the other side of the conversation has something really interesting to react to,
Right.
and now
Right.
you learn a lot about them by how they're reacting. So
Yeah.
so rolling with those wild ideas that jump in really helped me dial up authenticity.
Yeah. And I think writing, actually the physical form of writing, helps you to take an idea that you have and see if you can develop it into something. And so when we're saying like write it out, write the scene, and it might take you more than 3 minutes, it might take you 3 hours, but the fact is you wouldn't know if it was worth it or not. Is it worth,
Mhm.
unless you actually get it out there? Because I think everything seems worth it in your brain. It's like when you
Yeah,
finally tell the idea and you say it out loud and you go, oh, yeah, never mind. Like it
yeah,
sounded so good in my head. We say that all the time and it sounds good. Um, but okay, I want to go back to, you wrote out an outline.
mhm.
Why did you write out an outline? Is that something that you did for the videos as well? So that was a natural thing to do?
Yeah. I think that was a natural thing to do because oftentimes when we were putting really complicated concepts on screen, we needed to know where do we get into the story?
Hmm.
What are the 3 points we need to make along the way? And then how do you get back out?
Okay.
If anyone's ever worked on a case study or any kind of marketing material or really any exposition based content for a business or a nonprofit or any kind of organization, the pattern you follow pretty consistently is you have a problem, you identify what is the benefit that can solve this problem, and then, or sorry, what is the problem, what's a solution available for it, and then what is the benefit of
Yeah.
that solution. That is marketing 101 in a nutshell. And, that sounds really rigid and kind of unfun, but think about, I mean, we've all been using Homer's structure of storytelling for 6,000 years, and which is there's the separation, there's initiation, and there's return. That is what Homer outlines. Separation, there's a conflict in Act One. Initiation, at the end of Act One, you accept it, and now you're in the mix, and you're going to go solve your problem. And then there's the return, happy ending at the end.
Hmm.
Everything works out. And Homer put that together millennia ago, and we're still using it. That's Empire
Yeah.
Strikes Back. That's Home Alone. That is everything, except probably Napoleon Dynamite. That one doesn't have a plot. But aside from that, every
But I
other thing,
love
and
it.
maybe, and yeah, and maybe some avant-garde films that
He
your
gets
friend
the
with,
girl. He
kind
gets the
of,
girl, yeah.
sort of, I
They
guess.
play that game.
Never mind.
Or
They did play tetherball.
I
You're
would
right.
say tetherball. I would say unless you're French, and then there's no
Yeah.
happy ending. Everybody
Yeah.
dies.
That is uniquely French, yes. And so in a lot of the work I did professionally, that structure of, hey, there's a problem, there's a solution, here's the benefit, seemed
Hmm.
really rigid, but that is just a storytelling
But it
device.
works.
Within each of
Okay.
those three sections, you can get as creative as you want. You can go wild, just
Yeah.
hit those three messages along the way. And by outlining what you have and what all your material is, you can start to see what information goes in which of those three buckets. So when I started looking at the outline, a lot of it was this is going to be the longest thing I've ever written. Like collectively, I've
Okay.
written 20 times this much, probably more
Right.
than that, but never in one single block. And so, like 30 or 40 pages had been the max before this. And so, what I need to keep just the story straight. And then I need to have the flexibility that if something happens in chapter 7 that is not on the schedule, like I can go in that outline and make the correction to chapter 9 in the outline, jump ahead to chapter 20 and make a correction so that all those things can keep trickling down so that I don't forget. Like if something cool happens in chapter 4 but I've forgotten by the time I got to chapter 30, like that's a disaster. So
Okay.
that helped me keep everything straight. And we talked about being really precious about what we've put together. I was completely unsentimental about that first outline. That first outline was just a launch pad, and big chunks of it came out and big chunks came back in
Okay.
based on where the story was taking me. I knew where I wanted it to end, but I
Okay.
was not married to the route we were going to
At
take.
all. Yeah. I think that's, yeah, we can't be too precious with the first ideas of the book. Did you have a character in mind first or a plot or both?
I thought at first about well, in a very short synopsis. What gave me the idea was I saw this video. It was just a conspiracy theory video website. To be clear, I don't believe I do not go down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole. I look at them like fairy tales for adults. Granted, before like two or
They're
three years
fun.
ago, yeah, they're very fun. They're very fun. Too many of them are coming true now, but
Yes,
but
they're
still,
scary.
even then, up until the point they became real, I still didn't believe them. But I was watching one about a real project called Project Stargate, which is where they gave like grade school children LSD and then held up a note card and said, "Can you read the word on the other side of the card?"
That's
And
right.
if you scored like 1 out of 10, they brought you to SRI, Stanford Research Institute, and they gave you macro doses of LSD to try to teach you to project your mind into the Soviet Union and read the names of like their spies off a wall at the KGB headquarters, or what are the launch codes in a nuclear silo. And they were the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats explored the project,
Yeah.
but there were also a lot of really young people involved. And then in 1995 it gets discovered, and there'd never been any credible data ever recovered from this project, so they shut the whole thing down. And I was thinking about this, that there was children in this
Yeah.
program at the day they shut it down, and when they woke up that morning they were the most important assets our government had, and when they went to bed that night they had been told none of this was ever real, go home. And my reaction was, what does that do to a kid? What does that
Yeah.
do to when you grow up and you're an adult and you have to trust other adults? What is that? How do you react to your own children?
Oh
And
my
that's not
goodness.
my book is not about that project, but those concepts were very interesting to me. And so there was there was some research to do along the way. Well, in some sections, like, sometimes you'll go do 3 hours of research to finish a sentence because you want to know just enough about a concept. But for me,
Yes.
it was the person first, but that person was already ingrained, like set, like really deeply enmeshed in this world where everything was going to unfold.
Okay. Okay. So it's not about that project, but is it based on something they were part of a government project
It's
and
it
now?
is
So
about a
tell us
project
about
that
the what did the book end up being?
so the book ended up being about a girl who the child version. Well, we bounce back and forth between her being a
Okay.
child and an adult. The version of her as a child was very much the stories I've heard for the last 20 years about my very precocious wife as a child and her. She was quite the eccentric and wonderful child, and that was the kind of person who I thought would be able to survive and maybe even thrive in an environment where very secretive work was going on. It wasn't the doom and gloom like underground bunker that you see in Stranger Things where all those children are just dead behind the eyes, like operating. It wasn't necessarily that, but it was, hey, children have a certain predilection to be able to be highly functional in a type of research we're doing,
Okay.
and then what kind of child would be able to, like I said, thrive in that environment. But then how would that same child react when it all went away, when it's like, this didn't work out, let's go home. But then fast forward 30 years, there's new problems in the world, things that she knew, things that she saw, things that she was able to participate in make her uniquely qualified to help with current events.
Okay. Okay.
But I think fairly understandably, she has no interest in
Right.
participating. So what do
Interesting.
you do when current events are about to drag you back to a place that you have worked very hard to forget? And
Yeah.
not necessarily because you were traumatized, not because you have they're like you altered my mind and now I'm not a real person. No, I mean everyone's moved on with their lives, but why return somewhere that you've worked very hard to be separate from?
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. So then how long did this take you to figure out because that seems very like at 2 a.m. like a great idea. And then you wake up and it's 2 p.m. and you go, yeah, how the heck am
Yeah,
I going to do that? How long did it
yeah,
take you to find all those pieces? Like you said you had that outline, but then it
yeah.
changed. Um, how long did it take you to write that book and be satisfied with it?
So that was August 18th when I had the idea. I guess we were straying into August 19th by that point, but it was August 18th when I went to the concert at least. And then I uploaded it to Amazon on August 29th. So a year and
One
11
year?
days. A year and 11 days. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, let me explain how that works because
Okay,
there's a
you
lot of
must be.
people right now, before everyone turns off. I know you're fumbling for the pause button on your
You're
phone.
like,
Don't.
screw you, man.
Yes. And yes, indeed. A couple of things to think about is that from my approach to all these creative projects has always been strike while the iron is hot and keep striking as long as it's hot. And so I've always been very excited when those ideas arrive, when no matter through my career, what professionally, whatever the project was, when the idea jumped, I was very good at locking everything out and like, let's just pursue, I got to get this down. Let's write this. Let's get it going. The next morning, going just going crazy because the approval process to like get this thing funded and get this thing made is driving me crazy. And it would always be in a very accelerated process because I was impatient. And still it wouldn't be fast enough. These very reasonable procurement
Hmm.
people I would work with to set aside budget. And then once the project's working, like I want to work 24 hours a day on this project until it's done. Like I want to get this out. I want to get it out of my head and on YouTube or on a stage or published as soon as possible. I get a lot of tunnel vision and very obsessive with it. And so when this idea popped up, it was now granted I still had a day job that I needed to perform at a very high level because salaries and things like that
Yes.
and responsibilities. I agreed to do this job all like from 9 to 5 every day. But every spare moment I had was just this. Like I made a really big effort to I was uninstalling things on my phone that I thought would distract me so that I
Okay.
could just sit and write this. And what's really nice about so many of the tools we have available to us now is if I was at the post office, like I remember going to get my passport renewed and just typing madly into my phone like ideas I had or pieces of dialogue, sitting in traffic and just talking into the Bluetooth on your car to add different stuff. Being at volleyball tournaments in Vancouver, Washington. There's no reason to go to Vancouver, Washington, except to work on your book while people play volleyball. And so I was just sitting there in the bleachers, typing madly all
Okay.
day. And in between games, of course, if my daughter is listening, I was watching
Yes.
100% of your
Oh,
game.
100%.
And 100%. Even the times you weren't in the game, I did not crack the lid and keep typing on my laptop. But I mean, I really was fascinated by the process. The story
Mhm.
was immediately compelling to me. I mean, all your kids are beautiful to you, right? The story was beautiful to me. I loved it.
Right.
And whenever I wasn't writing it, I was thinking about things I was going to write. Like I
Okay.
do obsess like that. And that is a real downside if you, I guess, live in the same house as me because we sit down at dinner and I would say, kids, you are not going to believe what happened today. And I'd start telling them a story and they'd interrupt. Wait, is this a story? Did this even happen? I'm like, it kind of happened. It happened to me. Like I
It
was
happened
typing
in
this
my
during lunch
brain.
today and they were very patient, but also not. And so I took every spare second I could, and then
Okay.
all day Saturday, all day Sunday for a year and 11 days, and that included 3 rewrites.
Oh my goodness. All right. So when you're doing this, I would assume because you have been writing and you've been creating stories on YouTube, did you have to, was there anything about the technicality of storytelling in the novel form that you had to like stop and go figure out? Or I can say some people have plot going and then
Hmm.
they sort of lose the character. Some people don't really get that inciting incident. Some people can't really find the climax,
Hmm.
weirdly enough, or the ending. So did you have anything technical like that, or because of your background, was it fairly easy to follow that story line?
It was everything you just mentioned there was something I learned in flight along the way.
Okay.
So, for example, I was a third of the way through my first draft before who or what the central protagonist was going to be really locked up. And then I went back to the front and I started filling that in so that it would build up to it more. But like I said, I was a third of the way in and I thought, who's the bad guy? Like, what's the
Yeah. Yeah.
conflict? We're
Yeah.
just writing right now. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just writing. And in the outline, all the chapters where that stuff needed to be was I just had written uh, crisis, central protagonist causes a problem. Like it was literally, I knew where it went just
Yeah.
naturally, but didn't know what it was going to be yet. But I knew I needed to get started and I was going to find certain things. And that ended up being the case. And then that first draft, I made the mistake of showing the first draft to like 3 people who I really respected, who also were consumers of literature and had done some writing themselves. And they were really polite about it. But as I talked to them, they had really good feedback about where a couple of holes were, but more than anything, what I knew intuitively and also kind of came through in the feedback was um, we were light on people's motivations. Even though
Yeah.
I knew what they weren't coming through. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that was helpful to hear. But then also there were long blocks of description that on the second and third rewrites as I went through turned into long conversations where people were
Mm.
saying rather than telling, which is like story writing 101. And so going back and making those motivations really clear, like what had happened
Yeah.
in the past and what was happening in the present that would make future behavior understandable, certainly not predictable, but you would be able to understand it. And then instead of spending 2 paragraphs explaining how something is happening, having 2 people who are in the mix of it
Yeah.
having a discussion.
Yeah.
And how do you do that without it still being an exposition dump? And I thought
Mm.
one of the things I enjoyed doing the most was leaving a lot of things unsaid and letting
Yeah.
the reader like make those connections or have it just be not mysterious, but just I wonder what that means. And then 2 chapters later, we come back to it again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
those took multiple rewrites. The first draft was almost like a super long outline, and it needed to
Right.
get filled in the next
Yeah.
couple of times.
But it's nice that the people that read it were not only polite to read it,
Right.
but actually gave real feedback. So
Yeah, for sure.
I think some people are very afraid. I mean, and rightly so, like trying to find the right person to give you feedback, not the grumpy guy at the writer's critique, that just thinks everything's terrible. But to give, like, to be able to see that the story's there, you just need a little guidance because we all
Hmm.
need guidance. And I say it all the time, like, we somehow expect writers to know how to do it, but singers have their mentors and sculptors have their mentors and violinists, even when they're professional, they all have these people that help them along the way. So um I would encourage people to do that. Find somebody who
And
can give you the right feedback.
it really does go a long way. I mean, there's one principle there that says never take praise from someone who you wouldn't accept criticism from. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
be really particular about who you show it to. But also another thing that I had in mind during that phase was I worked at a radio station for a long time, and one of the things the program director always told those of us who are on air to be careful about was you're never going to be as smart as your audience. Like, don't argue with
Mm,
your audience. Like, don't take a stand that everyone listening knows is wrong. I mean, the collective intelligence of your audience is always going to be greater than yours, no matter the topic.
that's
And so,
interesting.
like, be willing to be wrong and to hear things. And so I was really particular about and careful about who I showed it to. I was so excited. I wanted to show it to a bunch of people. And but I knew that was a terrible idea. I just, once again, your kids are all beautiful to you, right? Like,
Right.
you guys, it's going to blow you away. And then as I talked to them, like, I mentioned in the acknowledgments at the end of the book, there was one lunch I went to with a friend of mine, the guy who helped me design the cover, who said, who just had some ideas, and it was just very open ended. But I was writing on the back of like my burrito wrapper and on napkins as we talked, just as ideas were springing up from fairly open ended observations he was making, and that lunch turned into 110, 115 single space pages. Right.
Yeah.
Because, and that's up to me to be able to take that kind of feedback and do something with it. Because if he just talked to me and I'd said, that's cool, and then finished lunch, it's up to the
Yeah.
writer to be able to take feedback and make something of it. And
Yeah.
that's hard to
That's
do.
the, it is hard to do, but I love you seem like having that open-ended approach of just like taking, I think it's just like what you said about writing. You can take it and you can toss it if it's not going to be good. But for somebody to be able to take the time to read it and then to take the time to give you feedback on it and sort of allow you to use your writer brain to dig deeper into your story, um, I think it works better than when we just hold it dear and then pay to send for an editor to tell
Yeah.
us who doesn't know you and might not be very kind about it. So what is the name of the book again?
So the book is Chandelier,
Do you have a copy?
right here.
It's
And
so pretty.
it is really nice, right? I would
Very
like
pretty.
everyone to judge this book by its cover because its cover is super nice. Big shout out to Greg Schreiber, who helped me do the finishing touches on the design. The double image there
Yeah,
was one of his many contributions, and
very cool.
I'm very happy with how it turned out. And um, I think the title and the cover will all make sense about halfway through. So.
It's always good. So what genre do you put it in? Is it literary? Is it
I would like someone to say
sci-fi?
that it is a genre-defying masterpiece that defies description, but that isn't true. It's just what I aspire to. No, we'll cut that. Whoever's editing this. No, it is, it's definitely, there are many elements of it that may fit into the thriller genre
Yeah, it
because
does
the
sound
the
thriller.
plot does rise and fall. There definitely is some intensity to it. There is a lot of discussion about some of the scientific principles behind what's going on, and so I think it may stray into the science fiction area, but it's not like laser guns and adventures in Star Wars. It's
I know
not
it's
like that
hard
at
to.
all. It's all very rooted in the present day. That was something that I made an effort on the even on the first draft. I was very self-conscious of every every line, every
Mhm.
scenario we're working through here has to be rooted in like the present day and real world. Like when there is a scientific concept that I use it to move the plot along and to explain why something is happening, not, hey, aren't lasers cool? And the
They are
science
cool.
fiction listeners are now so irritated that I keep using lasers as science fiction. But it was never just, it was always to move the plot along, but I would go do the research to find a real phenomenon that exists that matches what I
Okay.
needed to move it along. So it is essentially, I wrote it as if it is like historical fiction, right? I
Okay.
tried to root everything in things that have really, really happened and that are just all, 7 or 8 stories that happen to cross paths inside of this book.
We'll coin it literary thriller. How about that?
That's really good. Kat, you're good
We'll
at this.
we'll
Yes.
try. I can do it for other people, never for myself. So are you gonna come out with another book? I'm sure your wife is just dying for you to never see her again. You're
Yeah.
just in your study for all weekend long.
She's
Do
like,
you have another idea?
what if you could spend another year just saying things into your phone at all of our children's piano recitals?
Has she banned
Yes.
you from going to concerts?
Not yet. No, when I get going on the next one, perhaps. But I mean, this book ends in such a way that there isn't a sequel. That doesn't mean it ends
Okay.
badly. It just I
Mhm.
feel it is done. I don't
Okay.
see a way to continue it, and I think that's good. I think I told 100% of the story that I want to
Hmm.
tell in this world. I very much would like to write another one, but I mean, I'll be honest. This one came out of nowhere, and I was fortunate to be able to really run with it. Now I know I can do it, which really helps. I think
Okay.
I've read so many other authors and heard so many authors talking about that doing the first one is the best motivation and the best
Hmm.
justification and the confidence you need to do number two. So that's what I'm thinking about now. In fact, I was mostly paying attention during a meeting this weekend and madly writing on the back of a piece of paper an idea that I had. So we'll see. We'll see what
Hopefully, your
happens.
boss is not listening to this.
No, this was on Saturday, I'll have you know. This was a
Partially
civic event.
listening to this.
This was
Okay.
a civic event. This was for a non-profit generating organization. So, well, I guess they do generate some profits, but regardless, yeah, number two
So you
is
have number two.
I'm hoping. I think so. I just need to make it different enough than this one. My idea that I had this I guess it was 2 weekends ago was way too close to a couple central themes on this one, and I'm like I'm not going to be the guy now that just writes about the ephemeral nature of time and how math doesn't explain why it only runs in one direction.
Oh, you might be.
Um,
Because you will end up seeing from your writing that there is a theme that you can't quite, it's like a subconscious theme.
yeah, it is.
But
I
most
mean,
writers have that where they're like, again.
I mean, I'm sure you've read Stephen King's book about on writing, where he makes the comment. I don't think he coined it. I think he's quoting someone else, but he says there how every novel that's written is a long letter to someone. And
Probably.
that was certainly true. And but it was, I think I comment on this in the acknowledgement section of the book too, that I was on my last rewrite when I realized that the letter was to me, that I
Yeah.
was sorting out all these things I'd been thinking through it. And I'm like, geez, this is an unflattering portrayal of me. If like, this is me sorting out all of my ethical conundrums and philosophical dead ends on the
It's a
page. But
great way to do it. No one can
it's,
really
it's,
come at you. No one can
it's,
can't like it's
yeah,
fiction, guys.
it happened. It's done now.
So now you have it's out, it's in paper book, it's an ebook, and it's audiobook. You did all
And
three?
the audiobook's almost done. It's a hardcover paperback and Kindle, and those are
Ooh,
all available right now on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Ingram Spark, you name it. Check it
all
out
the
on
places.
Goodreads, Instagram, and Facebook. Oh, that's a mouthful.
All the
And
places.
but yeah, Chandelier, Amazon, ready to
We
go.
will we will have the links in the show notes, as well as you can find Ben Hawken, not with an I, with an E. I will have it written out for you in the show notes below. And yeah, definitely check out the book because A, you just want it on your shelf for how beautiful it is, but B, you should probably read it because we all have a TBR that needs to be read at some point. Um, Thank you, Ben, for coming on and telling us all about being a creative director. No, I'm just kidding about your new book.
Yeah, in that order. Yes.
In that order. No, you are now a writer. We expect more from you. We're going to read the book and then we're going to hound you for more ideas.
I can't wait.
All right.
All right, thanks, Kat.